Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be exploring the issues relating to neurodiversity and AI, both its potential benefits and potentially really big benefits, and its potential risks and really big risks as well. So what happened was a few of us who were interested in the area um, got in touch. Well, we both Nicola and Antonio got in touch actually, and kind of we formed an initial group around doing some stuff in this area just because of this really kind of unique situation about both the high potential benefits and the high potential risks of the situation. So, yeah, I am Matthew Bellringer. I'm chair of Neurodiverse IT, the group within BCS who are hosting this event. And this event is we are hosting, but the Neurodiversity and AI group is a cross stakeholder group, and it includes people outside of BCS. So it's not a BCS event itself, and not BCS thing itself. It's just a lot of us were associated, and it feels like a very relevant thing for neurodiverse IT to be talking about. And the Neurodiverse IT group is for neurodivergent IT professionals. So if you are a BCS member and not a member of Neurodiverse IT, please join it as a specialist group. If you are not a BCS member, then please do consider joining if this is relevant and useful to you. We will I will share more information about how exactly you can get involved and what our future plans are with this group as towards the end of the group. What we will first do is have a presentation from Antonio sharing some of the ways that AI can be used to increase inclusion and remove barriers for neurodivergent people. Then we will have a talk from Beckett talking about the concerns around AI and sharing some of the ways that AI can amplify existing barriers and maybe make full participation harder for us as neurodivergent people. Then we'll introduce some of the members of the group as we are, who we are, what we're doing about it, what our relationship to doing to neurodiversity and AI is, and what our interest is in the group. And then we will have a discussion where you can both share your questions. We can have a general discussion and share the knowledge that other people have in the room, and a chance to see how you might want to be involved in the group going forward as well. Please share any. Please do save any questions that you have for the speakers until the discussion, where we'll open everything up and be able to discuss it fully. So before we go over to that, what I'd like to do is really just say, because both whilst I think almost everyone in the room will probably have some idea about what neurodiversity is and what AI is, it's always good to clarify terms and to see where we are. So from the perspective that we use within neurodiverse IT is the kind of classical neurodiversity perspective that everyone is neurodiverse. We all have different lived experience as a result of different neural anatomy, but that some of us sit outside of the expected social cultural norms around what that anatomy is and how our brains work, how we experience the world, and are often marginalized as a result. And those experiences that might be associated with a specific condition like autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, Tourette's, or they might not. It's just simply being, fundamentally experiencing the world differently to most other people around you in the way that people are expected to experience the world. When we're talking about AI, we're not just talking about LLM chatbots. We're talking about things from relatively simple automated decision-making tools and the kind of tools that we've probably been relatively used to over the last few years, through kind of generative technology and things like LLMs, and into autonomous systems as well, and kind of all the way up to the breadth of AI systems that are being used and currently being developed as well. So I would like to start then by handing over to Antonio. Would you like to start and talk to us about the positives of AI, please?
Sure. Thank you very much. Going to start sharing my screen. I have a few. Yeah, I have a few slides to follow up. This, I think, was the introduction that we did at the beginning. And what I bring in today is first I have a slide to comment on neurodiversity, and I have been collecting this information from different sources. I put normally the source below in the bottom of the screen. Before jumping into talking about neurodiversity, I want to introduce myself. My name is Antonio Dalgoranda. I'm member of the Computer Society. I have been member for a while already. Um, I have a master, or I did my first master in artificial intelligence a few years ago. Um, and I found because I'm neurodiverse, I have both H. I have dyslexia, and because I have dyslexia, I'm not going to say that I have the other one, H. No, I'm not going to pronounce it today. Since recent years, I got more interested, and I think the new ways or the new wave of AI is it might be bringing some interesting capabilities to a sector or to functions that we have not seen before, and I will comment about that later. First, I wanted to point out a little bit about different neurotypes for our neurodiversity. So we have the first one. I'm not going to pronounce it. No, I'm not going to pronounce it. HDHD, autism, other mental conditions like anxiety, depression, phobias, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, uh, other that are calculated as well and put together on dysgraphia, which is a little bit lower than other together. In the report that I was considering, so that is when we investigate in terms of the workforce, what do we find? That most of the workforce, we can see that there is a big portion that is HDSD and autism, but there are more conditions there, and some of the actions that they are feeling or they are finding challenges. We can find that can count with dealing with overwhelm, dealing with criticism, navigating politics, social aspects. I have a few. I think the slide that we will share. We don't need to go through all of them, but we can see a few challenges that we find. So on the other hand, that we have is that AI there are quite a lot of different tools or different things that either generative AI or more traditional methods may now have the opportunity to address. At the moment, my point of view is that most of the tools that I'm testing still need, I don't find something that is silver bullet. But my point of view is that now this kind of um, artificial intelligence and also the previous one may allow to other people with a different skill set, like people with expertise in linguistic or in behavioral science, to coordinate things better with people that has the strength in automating the work for the good of people like myself. So many of these things can be addressed, or there are ways that AI might be able to address it. I mentioned, for example, here coach therapy or artificial intelligence therapy. ELISA was a program developed long time ago, so it's not necessarily something new. But there are a few areas that could or are looking for research and development of solutions that may impact some of the challenges that we may see. I don't want to take too much time. I think that's the main two slides that I have. Um, Math, I have this other slide, which is some of the links of some of the people that we have been connecting with. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. Or, oh, I don't know if you have another slide to present in this sense.
Super. Thank you, Antonio.
Pleasure.
So yeah, no, that's great, and I think it's really interesting to see all those all of the different possibilities, and I think you've really yeah, that's I think it's fascinating quite how many different areas there's potential there for. Um, I think even looking at that, it doesn't even include some of the things with um, like grammar checkers and things like that,
Oh
which
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
still AI and voice
Yeah.
speech to text and text to speech kind of tools as well. Is that or is that there?
I
Um,
know that I did it in the earlier slides. I don't know if I have grouped it in order to make it more concise. But yeah, you're completely right. You're completely right. Like grammar
yeah,
checkers,
yeah,
rewriting. Yeah, and that's a big one as well.
yeah.
Um, hmm.
And can I just yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay, super. Thank you very much. In that case, Beckett, could I ask you to kind of do the case for the prosecution, as it were,
Cool.
and and talk
Yes.
about the potential disbenefits of AI, please?
All right. Just want to check that my microphone's still okay. Brilliant. Okay. Hello, I'm Beckett. I'm someone with autism and synesthesia. I've worked in AI research in the past, and now I work in compliance for technology and youth human rights charity Five Rights. I previously chaired the Neurodiversity Network in my prior workplace, and I'm also currently the voluntary inclusion officer in the Neurodiverse IT interest group at BCS. I've seen firsthand the amazing opportunities that AI offers. I've also seen the dangers. I've been asked to talk a bit about the latter today, but please don't take that to mean that I think AI is ontologically evil or anything. I just think we should be aware of the genuine risks that might be overlooked and in fact often are overlooked. So the first point I want to make isn't exclusive to neurodiversity. It's something about AI and broader technologies in general, but it's especially important to emphasize whenever we get an exciting new technology toy, there is a tendency to decide it's the new panacea for every problem we've collectively ever had. Deciding AI is the right answer before you even properly formulate the question always carries high risks of getting it wrong. So this is sometimes called techno-solutionism, as it posits AI as the answer to an issue where other interventions, such as social interventions, might actually be far more appropriate, not to mention cost efficient. We spend so much money looking into AI solutions to problems that could be more easily fixed by low tech or even no tech proposals. So when it comes to neurodiversity, putting the answer before the question excludes opportunities for what we call participatory design. So you end up designing a solution based on what a designer thinks is right without considering the needs or wants of impacted people. I don't expect every neurotypical designer to have an in-depth understanding of my individual needs as just one autistic person, nor would I want them to assume that they do. So neurodivergent people aren't a monolith anyway. Everyone's got different needs, and those needs aggregate differently depending on the exact subgroup of the population you're trying to serve. Many of us grew up in a society that somewhat belittles neurodiversity, some conditions more so than others, and uses this to deny people their agency in a sort of societal mother knows best approach to our lives. A phrase common in disability advocacy circles is nothing about us without us, and that should certainly apply when you're building AI solutions for a marginalized or underserved group. And this is already a known problem in neurodiversity. So when Spiel et al. Evaluated the literature surrounding proposed technological interventions for autistic children, they found that the agency of these children was very, very rarely considered. They were seen as problems to solve or cure rather than human people to engage in participatory practice with on equal footing. So this links back to what's sometimes called the medical model of neurodiversity, that it's something wrong that should be cured away. This can feel demoralizing to many people living with conditions under the neurodivergent umbrella, and it can take agency away from them when they do seek to get help with certain things they find difficult. And this often compounds, especially when the people in question are children, who are sometimes treated as being too immature to understand what they want or need, even though international human rights conventions like the Convention on the Rights of the Child state that all children should get a say in all matters that affect them and be free from the effects of discrimination based on their status or the status of their parents. So the researchers in this review also found that this solutionism tinged medical model creates solutions that aim to reshape neurodivergent children to fit a neurotypical mold, sometimes even at the risk of distress, or with reliance on controversial, outdated models of therapy that are linked to later psychological harm. There was an almost total absence of solutions that try to facilitate a middle ground between neurotypical and neurodivergent that treat both groups as equals. So only one paper they studied was designed to help the neurotypical classmates of neurodivergent children better understand how to communicate with their peers. Again, perhaps this kind of problem could have been solved if the neurodivergent test subjects, sorry, were treated less as test subjects and more as co-designers. Even with children, and especially with children, we know that co-design works and produces more powerful change that's more sustainable. So the second half of the issue I want to touch on tonight is the fact that most of the data we have at the moment, which is used as the food for AI, no AI without data, it simply isn't fit for purpose. And your technology is only going to be as good as the data going in. First of all, the methods used for data collection are often not fully inclusive. So, for example, long and wordy survey forms are likely not designed with dyslexia in mind. Observational data collection probably doesn't account for the fundamentally different ways many neurodivergent people think and experience the world. People with dyspraxia might have additional difficulties traveling to take part in live focus groups. Unaddressed and unmitigated power dynamics between researchers and vulnerable groups can lead to data subjects also just saying what they think the people in power want to hear. So as a result, the outcomes are biased. And when your data collection is not inclusive, this erases the lived experiences of an entire group or groups of people. Also, the lack of anything to compare with means it's harder to detect any bias at all. So now your technology is going to run a high risk of harm, and you might not even be able to prove that there's anything systematically wrong. And we already see this in a variety of scenarios that do impact neurodivergent people. So, for example, remote test proctoring tools, which have become increasingly prevalent in both the professional and educational spheres in our post-pandemic world, often cause unfair barriers or hassle. You can't make any movements that the system deems unusual, which makes taking tests even more difficult for people with tics or dyspraxia. Your home lighting has to be really bright, which can be physically painful to some people with autism, obviously distracting you from the test at hand. You can't make any noise or the system brands you as cheating, which again puts people with tics like Tourette's at a disadvantage. So the already stressful experience of taking an exam, especially for younger students, becomes so much worse when the system was simply not designed with your existence in mind. In another example from the literature in 2023, Gadaraju et al. Tried to ask popular large language models, or LLMs, to generate some stories about people with various disabilities. So the stories showed outdated views, biases, and harmful tropes like what we colloquially call inspiration porn, which is where someone with a long-term condition is objectified as being amazing or wondrous through this narrative of overcoming their condition. So these stories often aren't intended to truly represent or empower people with the same condition. They're rather serving as emotional heartstring tugging content for people without the condition. So the person in the story is reduced to being defined by their neurodiversity, which in turn affects societal attitudes when these types of stories are widespread, which they often are. Alternatively, the stories sometimes focus on able saviors coming in to save the day, or are specifically constructed to brush systemic societal problems under the rug. So for a real world example, there was a story on the news about 5 years ago about how a young boy's family couldn't afford his mobility aids and the insurance wouldn't pay out. So wasn't it really lovely and inspiring when a group of high school students built some for him in their robotics lab? Of course, I think that's fantastic and very kind thing for these students to do, but at no point do these news stories consider to challenge why this child was being denied the aids they needed by mainstream society at large. And LLMs are trained on content like this, and they respin it to perpetuate the narratives that at best ignore and at worst hinder the challenge of getting people's needs taken seriously. Unless you consider a heartwarming story tailor-made to share free reactions on Facebook as a genuine need, which I don't, but that's just my opinion. So the issues, of course, amplify when people are marginalized in multiple ways. So people with autism are often, for example, characterized as robotic communicators, which might lead us to be more often accused of using ChatGPT to write things. That perhaps becomes even more likely if you learn English as a second language with a focus on formal academic writing. We already know the justice system doesn't serve the needs of people with ADHD very well. An estimated quarter of people in the UK prison system have ADHD, suggesting that they're either over-policed, incorrectly supported by society, or both. So if you introduce algorithms into policing and justice based on that data, you run the risk of replicating that bias and others, and maybe even amplifying them. So if you're from an ethnic background historically subject to over-policing and you also have ADHD, suddenly any systems based on historical, demographic, educational, and behavioral data start to look really stacked against you. This could perhaps be said again for systems that allocate benefits, alert child protective services, or diagnose people with health conditions. These are also areas where multiple marginalisation can put you at risk of harm. Another example, if you want to use an AI spelling and grammar tool, you'll be only taught that white, typically abled, and neurotypical English is desirable and everything else needs to be corrected. So finally, let's look ahead a little. So one proposed application of AI is social companion technology, such as chatbots or social robots for people with social difficulties. That sounds nice on the face of things, but we do need to ask some questions. Say there's a company that's going to develop one such technology. Have they grounded it in any kind of research with people with social difficulties, or are they pulling that AI answer out of thin air? If they have done research with their target user group, was it inclusive and co-designed, or was it perhaps exploitative and had issues of power dynamics impacting the data collection, or not fully inclusive of those it aimed to reach? How does the technology encourage socialization? Does it speak the language of neurodivergent users, or is it again trying to fit them in a neurotypical box, or train them into being, in heavy air quotes, more normal? Perhaps most importantly, is there the implication that this technology will replace human interaction to an extent, putting neurodivergent people away where the rest of society doesn't have to engage with them and leaving them with things like emotional isolation effects? So my colleague spoke a bit about the potential that AI can have for neurodivergent populations. I do think there is a lot of potential too. However, I think the AI future must be carefully designed for us and with us. Otherwise, we're just going to repeat the mistakes of yesteryear, or perhaps even scale them up and just be making the same mistakes more efficiently. So I think if there's something I want to close with, it's that our future should be one of co-design, participation, and empowerment. Again, nothing about us without us. And as adults, we are just one part of the story. Today's children are in a unique position where AI-powered life will be all they've ever known. Children are very often overlooked in terms of their agency or ability to speak their mind, and this is compounded for neurodivergent children. So we must listen to them, their needs and wants, and we must build a future that treats them as equals to their peers. And for neurodivergent adults, we must advocate for one another's seat at the table in designing these futures. We have to challenge this reactionary pushback against the notion of inclusion as strongly as possible. Inclusion makes better solutions that are more viable long-term. Industry has to recognize that neurodivergent people are people too. And not only that, we're people are worthy of building for and with rather than just building about. So only then can we build an AI-powered tomorrow for neurodivergent people and today's neurodivergent children that is truly safe by design. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I really want to echo, yeah, I think it's so important to consider. And interestingly, to your point about automating methods that we might wish had disappeared in the past anyway, I noticed that someone is coming to the market with an eye tracking and AI based tool based on ABA recently, which is, yeah, for those who don't know the context, ABA is very often considered problematic by autistic people, and is a set of of training methods that aren't really welcomed by a lot of the autistic community, myself included. So no, really timely and helpful. Thank you. So what I'd like to do now is move on to having a quick discussion about really who of us are starting the group. You've kind of had a bit of an intro from Beckett and Antonio already. Yeah, Wendy, could you take over and maybe introduce, help us introduce a few of ourselves, please?
Well, exactly. Yes. I've been looking, and I must admit, rather taken in by everything that Beckett was saying and not watching who's arriving. So I will shout, you guys, you'll have to wave your hand at me. I will kick it off and just say that I have ADHD and I have dyspraxia. Dyspraxia was diagnosed when I was a very young child, but at that point the teachers gave my parents the option to send me to special school, which they wouldn't go for. And after that, that record never followed me through school. So other problems I had subsequently did not follow either. So my interest in AI, I have to admit that I do try and be positive, and I want to know how it can help. But having listened to Beckett, and particularly the co-design thing, I think that's so important, and I'm going to be fascinated to see how those who know more about these things than I do will explain it to us as we go along. Nicola, I think I saw you in there somewhere. You came in. Do you want to put your head up and introduce yourself?
Hello. Sorry, my camera's not on. Hello, my name's Nicola, for everybody who doesn't know me. I actually do quite a few things for the BCS, but I'm as a volunteer, but with this particular group, as Matthew said at the beginning, myself and Antonio came to the group with an idea for a working group looking at neurodiversity and AI. Myself personally, I am currently 2 years into waiting for my formal diagnosis for autism. And it will make me, probably by the time I get it, I'll be 50 years old. So it's scary, the idea that I still don't have that diagnosis yet formally, but I'm told it's a formality. I just have to wait. So, you know, it's amazing that we've got this group together. I really do encourage, if any of you are interested in working with us, to get in touch, because it would be really lovely to have input from as many people as possible on this. We've got some good ideas for how we want to work together. We just need the help to get that off the ground. There's enough of us now, but if we can get more people involved, that would be fantastic. That's it for me.
Thanks, Nicola. Mark, I saw you come in as well. Would you like to step forward and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Sorry, I'll keep the camera off. I'm somewhere very dark, so you probably won't see me anyway. But I've been really fascinated by it in terms of I'm obviously neurodivergent as well, more autistic and ADHD, and I have a daughter who's also that way, and she was one who kicked me off on this because I could see how she was using tech to sort of control her world a bit. So there's some bits about obviously the bias and all the data sets that are really a problem, but I think a lot of AI literacy is needed. It's what we do a lot with in AI. But the other thing is that there are some benefits. I can see how I can use it to augment things, both for myself and say my daughter, in terms of expression and so on. But I think what would be better is lived experience and getting involved in working with AI, designing it to our needs and our benefits from our own insights. I think that's the thing that really matters. And that's an area I really want to explore with others as well. So beyond seeing how it can work is getting involved in applying your insights into it. So that's coming from me. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Any other members of the group who I didn't see come through the door? Can you jump up and introduce yourself? Trying to scroll down who we see.
Can't see anyone, but I'm not
Can't
very
see
good at this kind of. This is exactly the
No.
kind of thing where I miss things. So.
Yeah, no, I saw some people come in, but that aside, I saw, as people were coming in and introducing themselves, there was some of you put a little tiny sort of biog of why you're interested in this subject. So just in those terms, rather than getting into the discussion right now, does anybody want to just step up and expand a little on what they've put in their little bubble and explain why they are interested in this area? Stony silence.
I can, Wendy.
Thank you.
I actually didn't put half the stuff I do, because I thought about it from the perspective of my everyday and my day work. It's really something I utilize a lot, and I never really thought I would, because I worked for 5 years in an AI and data science company, and I thought once I left that would be it. But actually it's now become part of the everyday life. I use it in my sales pipeline, for my marketing work that I have to do for my own company. I use it to help plan out my week. I also use it for socials. I speak about it for organizations like the Royal Academy of Engineering. I speak about bias and quality and the intersection between both. And I think that's really important, especially as a lot of companies at the moment think that they can do without their quality teams. And also with my work with BCS SIGIST, Special Interest Group in Software Testing, we're really big on encouraging companies to, keep their quality teams, but also bringing other people along who are now doing testing of AI systems, because the amount of different roles doing testing now has just expanded, and really everybody needs to be up to date with what's going on Gen AI, in terms of Gen AI and beyond.
Thanks, Nicola. Kelly, I saw you jump up and down and in and out. Would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello there. I'm Kelly. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 46, 2 years ago. I've put my LinkedIn profile in the chat. I'm reskilling in AI at the moment. I'm also volunteering for AI experience as well. What drives me is, for the last 16 years, I was a parent carer for my son. And I say it before, I say it again, we've got so much work ahead. I have a global tech background from many years ago, so I'm just kind of leveraging that.
Thank you. I'm really glad I saw you pop around. It's a very interesting group. Anybody else who wants to put your head up and say something before we talk?
Denise has a hand up as well.
Excellent.
So
Go for it. Denise, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll put my video off even, or on, I should say. So hi, everyone. So I was diagnosed 2 years ago after moving to Amsterdam. Straight away, they saw, or the therapist I was seeing saw that I had the signs, even though I had been seeing different therapists in the UK for years, they didn't spot it. So I worked as a content strategist, and I do a bit of content design as well. And I don't know if anybody here does that. And if you're aware, a lot of us are kind of, or were, panicking that AI was taking our jobs, or, a lot of content writers that I know that were worried about it. When, I mean, the truth is, there's nothing to worry about. I recently did a talk on content governance in the age of AI. And I also deliver like content governance audits, particularly now that everybody's oversubscribing, or companies oversubscribing with their AI obsession. So I try and be as balanced as possible. I started off being anti, and obviously AI has been surrounding us for a long time, our newsletters, etc., our emails. But now obviously its head is raised above the parapet, and everybody's kind of thinking, okay, how do we use this? How can we optimize it? So I think the big thing for me has been to use it to help assist me in my work. And that's just quite a new experience. Just the last month, really, I signed up to Claude. I was using ChatGPT, but I'm researching, let's say, I'm doing a lot of research in terms of the bias, how to, reduce as much as we can. So I just wanted to hear what everybody had to say. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe Stansfield, I see you hiding away back there. Do you want to pop up and introduce yourself and say why you're interested in all of this stuff?
I will. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, so my name's Jo. It's lovely to meet you all. So I'm here kind of partly professionally and partly personally. So I've got professional interest in AI ethics. I do lots of work with a charity called For Humanity, which is building independent audit of AI systems, which is looking to kind of highlight and mitigate the risks that are going to emerge from AI systems regarding bias and privacy, ethics, trust, and other dimensions. I'm probably mostly here for this in my capacity as a parent of a neurodiverse child. Matthew had the full-on rant about this when I bumped into him recently. And just seeing his experiences at school, that they're deploying more and more tools for homework, essentially AI sets and marks their homework. And I have never experienced him having so much challenge in school as when it's got a very fixed system with kind of a fixed way that it expects him to be able to answer questions. And he simply couldn't do it. And it was really distressing. And all of the kind of surrounding things of like the consequences for how his friends talked to him and how he felt about himself. It just, yeah, is on my mind, how are we actually making sure that AI tools are properly accessible for people who think differently and are expected to use them in their day-to-day education and work. So yeah, that's it. That's why I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jo.
Okay.
I think David also has their hand up. So would you like to speak? Or is that hand down now because the moment has gone? Or...
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes,
we
can hear you.
got
yes, we got you. Oh, and gone again. You're muted again for some reason.
How about now?
Yes, all good. Yep.
Okay. The wonders of using Zoom on your phone. I can't look at the cameras and also speak apparently, which is great. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to share. So I've diagnosed with autism a couple of years ago now. To kind of position that piece on the AI front. So I use AI quite a bit as a support aid. So using Copilot at work is great on calls, helping me to stay focused on it without having to think about the notes, or if I become distracted by something, Copilot's there to help catch me back up. I know that's not the best of behaviors, but it's there to help. There's been some other tools as well where you can, and Copilot's bringing this feature in now, where you can collate your own set of documents and have the AI help you to interrogate all of them together, which I think is fascinating. As for the accuracy of the output, I think that's still yet to be established, but at least having it there as acting as that knowledgeable friend, I guess is really useful. On the negative side is I'm also building a call forecasting model using AI, and I think it echoes the point on the piece of the quality of the data you put into it also relates to the quality of what you get out. So if there's any biases or anything within that, yes, I'm looking at more numerical data, but it skews the output of what you have. So I think that the points around the caution that's needed with AI, especially with some people who aren't as AI literate or computer literate, I think there just needs to be massive caution, and probably the education piece on making sure they understand the limitations of it, and just sort of general critical thinking that needs to go into it, and not just trusting AI to be that one source of truth, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's all I wanted to bring for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else?
We've got Jackie with a hand up as well.
Excellent.
Hi. Firstly, thanks so much for inviting me to this call. Absolutely fantastic. I'm fascinated already. And Beckett, I loved your positioning of what you sort of said. Really interesting. So I call myself a grandma in tech. So I work on a tech project, which is community mapping charities, community groups and organizations. And I already knew I was dyslexic, so I discovered that at the age of 32. But then at 55, I was diagnosed with both autism and ADHD. And do you remember when computers sort of first came in and you could do spell check, and it was just like this amazing bit of magic for people who were dyslexic, and you know, you could just suddenly do something that you couldn't do before without looking very stupid. And I think AI is like that next stage of it, and I'm quietly confident but also respectfully cautious with it. It is not always correct, it's not always right. But I use an AI tool called Sintra mostly, and it's got 12 little helpers, and they're sort of like, they've each got their own character, but one will help you with SEO, one will help you as your PA, one will help you with, you know, copywriting and things like that. And I actually write to it as though I'm writing an email to a team member. So I'll go, hi, Soshi, you know, I'm working on this. Please, could you help me with this? Could you give me some ideas or whatever else? And I say my pleases and thank yous. And someone recently said to me, why do you do your pleases and thank yous? And I said, because if I don't, the way my mind works, I might forget to be respectful with real human beings. So I actually need to be respectful with AI, because I don't want to change who I am as a person. I don't want to change those habits or unintentionally forget and come across as being rude with a human being. But I actually find that the AI, because I'm not so worried about hurting its feelings or getting something wrong, I'm actually more confident with what I'm asking for help and support with. You know, I don't feel like I'm putting on it. So actually it's opening up a whole world in a different way. And I hope that resonates with somebody out there, because I just think it's all in the way we look at it. It's bad if we look at it if it's bad. It's amazing if we look at it if it's amazing. But if we take everything with a pinch of salt and we keep that respect and we find the way it works for us, then it could actually be incredibly, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? You see, it's that time of day. I've been in meetings all day, just opening up the world to you. So yeah, that's all I've got to say. But I'm really interested in these conversations and I'm fascinated by it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm still, there is stuff in the chat, and I appreciate with Graham. Yes, stuff with a cold, but do read his piece there. Anyone else wants to say? And then we'll just open the floor to discussion after that. Can you see anyone else, Matthew?
No, I think that's everyone. So we can open up to.
But,
I'd like
yeah.
to, before we go to. Thank you, Wendy. Really appreciate
okay.
that. What I'd like to do before we open up to a really general discussion is ask: are there any questions for either of the speakers that anyone would like to raise or ask specifically? I know we had a couple of questions in the chat. I think they've been answered. So. Can we give a bit more background into the BCS group? Yes, of course. So Neurodiverse IT was started as, I take it you mean Neurodiverse IT rather than, because there were a couple of others mentioned as well. So yeah, good. Okay. So Neurodiverse IT, the link here, is you do have to be you have to be members of the BCS group to be able to join that group, but you can come to all of our events for free. So you just follow BCS on Eventbrite and you'll get notifications. So there are, yeah, so we founded through 2-3 years ago. I've lost track of time. Of course I have. Yes, to help neurodivergent IT professionals to share really the practice, that what we've done and the contribution that neurodivergent people have made to society through IT as a practice. We actually were formed when me and a co-founder both simultaneously wrote to BCS saying we really should have a group around neurodiversity independently without knowing that either of this existed. And so, yeah, so we formed the group. We meet relatively regularly. We not quite monthly meetings, though we're trying to be a bit more regular. We also have if you're interested in volunteering and serving, we have a very broad committee deliberately. So lots of people are so we have a wide variety of different lived experience of neurodivergent conditions represented. And because bear the kind of the load of doing the work and really be able to focus on the things that each of us is strong at, which is just the thing that's really important to me personally as well. So so if you're interested in getting more involved in volunteering, we will be having our AGM in January, and there will be details of that coming up. So if you're potentially interested in that, please do get in touch with me directly, and I'll just share my LinkedIn. I'll share my connection details. You can find me. There really aren't that many Matthew Bellringers on LinkedIn, but my link is yeah. Oh, so yeah, super. Thank you. Where are we? So yeah, so I'll share. So you can either connect with me and send me a message on LinkedIn to find out more, or send me an email at matthew@matthewbellringer.com. Both of which will, if you're interested in volunteering or finding out more about potentially volunteering as part of the committee. Also, if you're potentially interested in being a speaker at an upcoming event, because we're always looking for speakers who are speaking about things relevant to neurodiversity and IT. And I know I can see at least one person who I know is also on our list of potential speakers here. So thank you very much for joining. And we'll be sorting out something in the imminent future. Oh yes, oh thank you, Mark. Yes, we've also got a group available on LinkedIn if you want to join and keep track of what we're doing. I think that about covers it, hopefully. Any other specific questions about the group, or have I covered everything? Well, I'll assume I've covered it unless I hear anything else. Brilliant. Okay, great. Thanks, Graham. Cool. So yeah, so do we have any specific questions about for either of the speakers at all, or also any points, any reflections on the particular talks on the benefits or potential disbenefits of AI? You can either raise your hand or just speak if you like.
So for either of you, really around the whole idea of how you sorry, let me rephrase that. One of the questions that came up in another discussion I had was, how can you reduce this whole idea of the AI bias problem? And I just wondered if any of you had any successful strategies that have worked or that you're aware of that helps to reduce, not that you can completely reduce bias, because that's a bit of an oxymoron, but you know what I mean.
I think Nicola, I want to go first.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, sorry, can you hear me? It's not necessarily, you're right, you can't remove all bias, because actually you need some in a balanced system. One of the things we always encourage from my perspective in quality is to work very closely with your quality teams and ensure that they're involved in the process of testing the models, but also equally before that they're involved in setting up the data that's going to be fed into the models. Even if that doesn't happen, especially in smaller companies, they may be buying models off the shelf and they're not really looking at the too deeply into what data is going in. They're waiting until way down the line before they even think about that. And then it's going out into production environments and causing chaos. We're always saying to work very, very closely with quality teams. The irony is this year, lots of quality teams have either been fully disbanded due to the fact that companies want to save money and think that they're using quality teams, testers, people with those specific job titles as the reasons why they're not producing as much work. And they're saying that that's the reason why they're not, their production is down. But really what's happening is that there's more of a need for testing, a stronger, more rigorous testing, as we saw with CrowdStrike this year, for example. So you need to make sure that that's happening. Or anyone who's involved in testing gets involved in, talking to teams about the data. That's really, really important to make sure that they're using good quality data. Otherwise, it's bad data in, bad out, basically.
Yeah. I can probably add to that if you no one else wants.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on where you're coming from. So if you're a big organization who has the privilege of being able to collect their own data, then obviously your data approach needs to be participatory, and you need to come towards your data subjects on an equal footing and not have this imbalance of power. So your data is more likely to be correct, and you need to anticipate the challenges to collecting data with your particular group, and those might be accessibility barriers, or they might be lack of trust in the people you're trying to reach. They don't want to give you the data. You need to work on your relationship with them first. For smaller organizations, they will likely have to use data that already exists. And I think whether you're doing that or making your own data set, you need to come at things from a perspective of assessing the risks before you start, because bias is one of the biggest risk factors in AI at the moment. Therefore, it stands to reason that it should be mitigated like any other risk, like a cyber risk, like a physical safety risk. You know, even if you can't design bias out of the system completely, you can mitigate and minimize the impacts that it has. And again, I know I keep hammering this point home, but talking to the people you're actually making the product for or about is one of the best ways to get insight on how to do that.
Great, thank you.
The only thing that I will add is that also depends where you want to capture the data. I mean, the bias can be present in the data collected for the training, or might be in the inherent of the data. It might be in the algorithm, or it might be completely outside. So it might be many different sources where the bias have been introduced. So it would be interesting to know in which situation we are using one or the other. If the data, if the bias is towards the algorithm providing less biased response, what can be done always is trying to make sure that the answers are diversified, but obviously that might not be as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a real risk of replicating like bias that's in existing data sets that exist in the outside world, and then just automating it at scale, which is yeah, exactly. And I think that's a real concern in terms of effectively just amplifying the barriers that already exist in society, which is a real worry for sure, and it's non-trivial problem to solve as well. So yeah, thank you everyone, and thank you for the question as well. We've got a couple of comments in the chat as well about these, and some suggested links as well. So
yeah, I've got a comment. I can read it out in case people aren't able to read it in the chat.
Thank you.
This is Peter. I have a concern that AI usage and recruitment will embed decades of bias and non-diversity, whether gender, ethnicity, or neurodiversity. Is the BCS doing anything to mitigate these problems? It's a great question.
It is a good question. I mean, in general, BCS is moving in this direction. We did some work. We've been through Neurodiverse IT. We've been trying very hard to really get the message out there and get it established. We also have other inclusion equity groups. We call it, that's the current name, sorry, current equity groups for different minoritized and marginalized groups within IT. So yeah, so there's a range of different ones, and I'm afraid off the top of my head I'm going to forget them, so I'd be really brilliant. Thank you. Could anyone steer me to there's I know Embrace.
There's women, BCS women.
Women BCS. Is there
Pride.
Pride, which is LGBTQ plus. And yeah, is that all of the equity groups, including us?
Digital Divide, which is
there's Digital Divide, which is really about digital exclusion in general as well. So that's the breadth of things that BCS is doing, and each of those groups is taking a specific effort. And also within BCS, we're kind of working towards sharing the practice and the knowledge that's within these groups and the lived experience, the expertise by lived experience as well. So yeah, Nicola, did you? Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to add to that not to forget that that's actually part of the working group kind of plan that we wanted to look at recruitment and bias as well.
Yeah, absolutely. These are issues that we're taking forward, kind of as well as what BCS is doing, particularly in this. So yeah, within the working group. So it's because in a way, it's, I mean, the way we're approaching this is that it's important that BCS and us as BCS volunteers are involved, but we also wanted to make it a broader group than that, because it crosses so many different stakeholders and has so much impact. So even if you're not a BCS member, you can accompany us with this. We're currently coordinating things via a chat on Signal. I'm not 100% sure it's a good idea to share a Signal invite link on an open Zoom. So what I would ask people to do is, if you can get in touch with me either by email or by LinkedIn, then and ask me, and I'll be very happy to share that with you, so you can join and keep in touch with what we're doing. Is everyone comfortable scrolling up a bit for my contact details if necessary? And if anyone else also wants to volunteer and share their details to pass on the link, that I'm completely welcome for that as well. But if anyone, yeah. So yeah, that should work, I think, rather than sharing the. I think slightly worried about Signal invite links in a public space.
I'm happy also to share my details if anyone wants to reach me out.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, definitely. And yeah.
I saw that Joe was mentioning also that BCS also has the ethical certificate for AI, and that's also one of the other actions that we are taking.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a range of different things going on. I think it's really a case of bringing together a lot of these efforts that we're trying to do.